Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, Force here, and today we'll be taking a look at a board control focused Warlock deck. This deck was first posted up on Team Liquid by a player by the name of Curie. The idea is to try to control the board by destroying your opponent's minions and as such controlling the flow of the game. We've got 8 turn 1 creatures including Voidwalkers and Flame Imps, some buffing creatures that allow you to trade up your small minions for higher value minions through the Shattered Sun Cleric and Dark Iron Dwarf, and then some combos such as Power Overwhelming plus Shadowflame. Now with the general premise out of the way, let's take a look at the deck in action. Now unlike other Warlock decks that tend to be more hyper aggressive and suicide focused in terms of just dumping your life and trying to kill your opponent as fast as possible, you can certainly get early kills with this deck, but the main idea is to try to maintain that board control and then just take it from there. And it's more about being responsive to what your opponent plays, taking out what they have and swinging for their face once their board is essentially clear. Or at least that's how it works most of the time. I'm thinking about dumping the Defender of Argus actually. I like holding on to these 2 turn 1 drops, and we ended up getting a Dark Iron Dwarf, so this is going to be a more aggressive hand as opposed to if we had that Defender. And you know what we're going to open up with? I think we're actually going to open up with a Flame Imp. If he ends up coining into a weapon, then he's still going to take 3 to the face. If he doesn't coin into a weapon, or I guess he could coin into a slam, then we're going to get a huge advantage here early game. So here's the coin. I'm assuming he's got a response for this as such. Let's see what it's going. Oh, it's going to be a Knife Juggler. Not actually exactly ideal for him, and we will happily make that trade. I will happily trade my 3-2 for his guy right there. And in the meantime, we're also going to pop down both of these guys, and then we'll go ahead and take this thing out and pass the turn over. So remember, controlling the board is more important than swinging straight for his face most of the time with this deck. Because once you control the board, in many cases you control the game. He's going to throw down the Acidic Swamp Ooze, and that is also something that we're going to be able to get rid of. In fact, I think the play here, we could, we can either do this to pump him up or pump him up, and I'm thinking we're actually going to go like this. Well, if we do this, he's still going to have 1 health, but this guy's going to have 2 health remaining because of the Divine Shield. So we're going to pump him up with our pumper minion there, or the buffing minion. Get rid of that. We just lose our Divine Shield, and we still have the 2-2, the 1-3, and now the 3-3 in play as well. So we've gotten rid of his early game creatures, and we have a strong board. This is precisely how the deck's supposed to play. And the other great thing about this deck is it's got such great synergy. You're going to notice, I mean, we've had great plays every single turn, but now also we can throw down a Dark Iron Dwarf and we can pump this up. We've got the advantage of life tap, and the advantage of this deck with so many low casting minions is that life tap becomes that much more effective, as you can typically life tap and then play what you tap into. So we've got 3 health on this guy, so there's a couple of things that we could do. We could pump this up and trade with that. Another thing we could, I don't necessarily know. Let me try to think here. Actually, you know what here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna trade this. It's gonna get his other thing into play, which we are going to get rid of with this, and then we're gonna hit him for 4. There we go. Now obviously there were a few different ways I could have approached that situation, but the way I did approach it allowed me to keep my creatures in play. Oh, that, of course his cleave hits those 2. Well, we still have got our 2 big guys in play. Now we just have 1 big guy in play. But he's dumped a ton of cards. But I think that last turn actually went pretty well for us, and I think overall this game is going very, very well for us. Alright, so we're gonna, well, before we swing him for that, why don't we actually drop down the Novice Engineer. See what we draw into. We draw into an Argent Commander, okay. And then I'm also going to drop down the Voidwalker, and then we are going to swing in his face for 4. And instead of playing the Bloodmage Thalnos right now, I think I'm actually just going to life tap. Something else with this deck that's important to keep in mind with this deck is not overextending. You don't want to overextend when you're in a clear position of strength, which I am at the moment. So we're going to be happy with our current position and not dump too much for him to potentially, what if he throws down a Brawl and then all of a sudden he just clears everything off our board? That's a concern. Right now, I'm probably going to go with the, we could either go with the Argent Commander to be very aggressive and push to his face, or we could go with the Flame Imp to give these guys more health. That doesn't give us a distinct advantage, since next turn, no matter what, he's going to be able to take out this Dark Iron Dwarf. So I think we're actually going to play the Argent Commander at this point. Especially since we have such a clear advantage. He's got nothing on the board. Obviously he has his weapon, but now he's down to 11 health at this point. And we're still up at 26, which makes us pretty comfortable to freely life tap, and then we're going to be able to play a lot of stuff next turn if we so desire. We've got a pretty dangerous situation for him next turn, and he's actually going to pump into that to get rid of the shield, and yeah, I think he's pretty much giving up at this point. I'll just say well played to him too. And he's gonna choose death. Okay, so pretty good example of how this deck works. This was actually one of the tougher potential opponents. Warrior is one of the more difficult matchups for this deck. But anyways, now with that deck gameplay out of the way, let's take a look at the deck list. So as you can see here, lots of early game plays. In fact, a majority of this deck is between 1, 2, and 3 drops with just a few cards that are 3+. We've got a few of these 4, 5s, 6, and then that one Lord Jaraxxus as the 9. Prior to doing this, I have played a few games with this deck. I've also read through the guide, which I'm gonna highly suggest you guys give a look. But let's run through the deck list. We've got 2 Soulfires, obviously for, you know, eliminating minions or just finishing off the player at the very end. 1 Mortal Coil, very nice for early game picking off small minions. Power Overwhelming, good for comboing as well as trading up. And then here are some of our early 1 drops. We've got 2 of the Argent Squires, 2 Blood Imps, 2 Flame Imps, and 2 Voidwalker. This type of deck is especially good playing as a Warlock, like this type of small minion creature control, board control deck, because the Warlock has so many great turn 1 drops. Again, the Blood Imp, the Flame Imp, and the Voidwalker are just hilariously strong turn 1 plays. 2 of the Demonfires, which can either be used for creature removal or a lot of the time to pump up your own creatures to either protect them or allow you to trade up. Bloodmage Thalnos, it's just a nice early game play. The spell damage we can take advantage of, and the Death Rattle to draw a card, why not? Because we have so many small creatures, Knife Juggler just synergizes very well and makes a lot of sense in this deck. The Novice Engineer, nice early game play, something you can pump up with Power Overwhelming or your buff creatures like the Dark Iron Dwarf and Shattered Sun Cleric. Plus you get that ability of drawing a card which lets you thin out your deck, letting you pull into some more stuff. The Shattered Sun Cleric, the first of our buffing creatures, just such a very, very strong card, pretty much played in most early game and or aggressive decks because it's 3 mana for a 3/3, plus you get that extra 1/1. It's just very, very strong. We've got the Shadowflame, again, great combos with the Shadowflame and Power Overwhelming. Pump up on your creature, swing for a lot of damage, and then Shadowflame doing mass damage to their entire board. Most of the time, it's clearing their entire board. The Dark Iron Dwarf, our second buffing creature, again, letting us pump up our early creatures, allowing for trading up or just making them more effective in the late game. Defender of Argus for that necessary taunt in some situations, and we also have the taunt there from the Voidwalker. The Azure Drake, it's just a nice 4/4, good against Priest. We get the spell damage, we get the card draw. Very, very nice to have. And if you're wondering where the spell damage comes into play, we're pretty much looking at like the Soulfire and the Mortal Coil there. Sylvanas Windrunner, it's almost a must-have, I feel like, in a lot of decks. This is a very, very strong card with your board-clearing capabilities with things like Shadowflame and Power Overwhelming, and you can also go like a Power Overwhelming on the Sylvanas Windrunner, eliminate your opponent's creatures but the one that you want to take, and then get that trade-off right there once this thing dies, plus deal that 9 damage. Argent Commander, just a great card to have. 4/3, Divine Shield, Charge, very nice mid to late game card. And then the Lord Jaraxxus, specifically used against decks that you have a harder time with, such as the Mage deck is supposed to be this deck's toughest matchup. So yeah, that's a look at the Board Control Warlock deck. Once again, this was posted up on Team Liquid by Curie. He has a great guide that if you're going to play this deck, I definitely suggest reading. Sort of explains not only the decisions behind each of the cards, but also the various matchups. And I mentioned how Warrior was a harder matchup. I was actually mistaken there. The hardest matchups for this deck are the Mage as well as a fellow Warlock, and those can be the toughest matchups. Warrior is actually sort of closer to the bottom of the list. It's aggro Warriors that can sort of give this deck a little bit more of a run for its money. But either way, very well-rounded deck, has a very strong win ratio, and in the current meta game, it's quite effective. Now, if you're looking for some more gameplay, be sure to tune into the follow-up video in which we'll be playing about 2 to 3 games with this deck in Masters Star 3-star Masters, just to see how it performs. But I expect it to do quite well because this is a strong list. All right, thanks guys so much for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe, and as always, keep watching and keep owning.